Welcome to Off the Shelf, Conversations with Authors. I'm Martha Kofod, and our guest today is Dr. Ray Dela Cruz, who is originally from the Philippines, and that's essential, I think, to your background. We need to know more about your early interest in being a playwright.
Yes. Yeah.
Would you expand on that?
Well, I have always loved the theater, even when I was a child, and I grew up in a coastal town in the northern part of the Philippines. This was in the early 60s, and there was no television, and there was a movie house that showed Tagalog films. That's the primary language in the Philippines, Tagalog. This is around, the language is spoken around Manila. And they only showed movies like once or twice a week. So a lot of that was, in the town, people really love telling stories. And even the living rooms are set up for conversation, just like this. And so there are a lot of oral stories that I heard, and that really encouraged me to be very imaginative. Yeah.
So telling stories was the entertainment then source for most families.
Yeah, and then also I interacted with with my peers and adults. I mean, I freely talked with adults. There was really no distance. But when adults were speaking, that was a no-no. But I was a very inquisitive child, and the adults would answer my questions. Yeah.
So then you started writing plays. Were they based on some of these stories?
No, not really. I went to a Catholic grade school and high school in Manila. Because then from the rural area, we went to the city because it was time for us to go to high school. I mean, my two brothers, it was time for them to go to high school. So I studied at a Catholic grade school and high school. It's run by the Benedictine priests, and it's called Sambeda College. Yeah, and I have always loved the theater, and I was a terrible actor. So I was relegated to doing the props, yeah, and then so that was the time when that they were really nurturing the Philippine theater. So we're encouraging plays written in our languages. We have 60 or 70 languages in the Philippines.
So you actually had plays produced while you were in high school?
Yeah, well, I ended up being the director too.
Were they high school plays then?
For high school plays, but I was writing plays and directing plays, and that really, I think I'm a better director than a playwright, I think, yeah. So that really nurtured my leadership skills too. And the most difficult too is to give directions to your peers. Okay, so I was able to achieve that. Yeah.
Or getting your peers to follow your directions because you are peers.
Yeah.
I
and then
understand.
when I went to college at the University of the Philippines, and then I really wanted to become a film director. And the closest major that I could get was to study broadcast communication. That's radio and television. Yeah, I did some jobs at a film studio in the Philippines. Then it was time for me to come here in 1978 to join my mother. My mother was a nurse at Cook County Hospital. So, and then...
so she preceded you. She came to the United States before you came.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we joined her as we finished college. Yeah. And I've been here for almost 33 years now. Yeah.
And after you came here then, you had your bachelor's degree then from the Philippines.
Yeah, in broadcast communication. My first job was I was a payroll accounting clerk. And then at night, I went to school at University of Illinois at Chicago, or UIC, and I studied Masters in Theater. And then after that, I work at an advertising company on Michigan Avenue. And then I was in the media department. And the advertising has always been a very unstable job. When I lose an account, out you go. So that almost happened to me once. So I decided, one of my good friends, his name is Ricky Morales, and he inspired me to get into special ed because he's a special education teacher. So that's how I became a special ed teacher. And I've been teaching with the Chicago Public Schools for the past, 23 years? I'm at a grade school near O'Hare Airport, yeah. And then this is the John W. Garvey Elementary School at O'Hare.
How large are your classes?
No, I used to
special
have
ed?
the self-contained primary level, but I do, and then I
Pull
did
out?
that for 18 years. The self-contained, where you have the students with
Yes.
learning disabilities, cognitive disabilities, and behavior disorders. And I had that for 18 years, and then I did resource pull-out for
A pull-out class.
pull-out for
yes.
class for in primary and intermediate. Then I was a pull-out resource teacher for the upper grades. Now we're doing inclusion. You know, the students are in the general education classroom, and then I still do some resource.
But and now in the past, you had done a presentation on using your theatrical skills with special ed.
Because I have always loved the theater, so I had the opportunity to study to get my doctorate in special education at Illinois State University, and my dissertation was on the effects of creative drama on oral and social language skills of children with learning disabilities. So I was able to incorporate my love of theater into what I was doing, into the dissertation. Yeah.
And are you currently applying those skills with your classes or with the students? That
While
the pull-outs?
while I had my students for as part of the dissertation, yeah. And then, but what I did too was I did presentations on a Philippine board game. It's an ancient board game. It's called Sungka. It's related to the Mancala that we have here originally from
with
Africa.
the little pots and the
Yeah.
and the stones.
The stones, yeah. But there are like 500 versions around the world. An ancient game, and it's a Muslim game, really. And we have Muslim culture in the Philippines. That's how it started. I did a research article about that, and it was published in the Exceptional Children, the Millennium issue in January 2000. Yeah, and that I apply with my kids because with my students, they love it. They love it. I mean, I think they get bored with the computer games and everything, and I think they really want to go to the basics, and they really, really enjoy that. They clamor for
Hands-on
that.
is much
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
Are your students, do you specialize in either math or language or both?
No, basically I teach reading and math, and writing, and written expression.
And what age?
Oh, I have a multi-age group now. I do inclusion for the students with learning disabilities and behavior disorders are in the general education classroom. And then I do resource pull out for students with learning disabilities too, in mathematics, reading, and written expression.
And in this journey from theater and through special education, have you done any further writing after your playwriting in your earlier years?
Well, I had an anthology of my plays published in 2000. 2000, yeah. There are 9 plays in that book. And then the first play that I wrote is called Tatlong Manika, or Three Dolls. And it's really, those 3 dolls really represent the different social classes in the Philippines. Yeah, there's so much poverty in the Philippines. So there's a huge economic gap in the Philippines. And I wrote that my first original play when I was in high school. I must have written that when I was 15, and it was produced by the Philippine Educational Theater Association. They had a playwrights development program, and I was part of that. Yeah, and then I wrote a play called Convention ng Mga Halimaw. It's called well, the translation of that is a Monsters Convention. Yeah, it was a satire on the Philippine Constitutional Convention in the Philippines, circa 1971. That was the time when Marcos was trying to extend his term, and he was trying to influence the convention to extend his term. So it was a satire on the convention, but I made the constitutional delegates as Philippine monsters. We have different kind of monsters there. And I entered it. It was produced by, it was a teen theater production of the Philippine Educational Theater Association, or PETA, maybe 1971, yeah. I entered it in the Palanca Awards, which is the version of our Pulitzer Prize, yeah. And I placed third in the one-act play.
Oh, very good.
Play, yeah, at the age of 17. So it was a great honor, yeah. But the most recent play that I wrote there was really based here on Filipinos here in Chicago. The title of the play is called Garrett. It's the name of a person, but it's about Filipinos in Chicago. So that is the last play that I have written. Yeah, it has not been produced yet. But Garrett shows, we have many Filipino immigrants here in Chicago.
All right. Now, this publication is in English, or it's in?
Oh, it's in Filipino. In Filipino.
I see.
Yeah.
So is there a demand for library publications in this language?
Well, if I really want to be sincere in what I am expressing, it should be in my language, because English is just my second language. Yeah.
Sure.
And there's so much loss in the translation. English is widely spoken in the Philippines too. We're the second largest English-speaking country in the world. Nobody knows that. After, I think, third largest after United Kingdom and America. Yeah, English is widely spoken. We grew up watching Hollywood films, and we learned English at a very early age. Yeah.
Was your education in English?
Yeah,
the schools that you attended in?
Yeah, well, the medium of instruction in the Philippines up to now is still in English. They're trying to turn it into Filipino, but the medium of instruction is basically in English. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we have a separate Philippine copyright. So if you look at your dictionaries, there's a separate Philippine copyright. Yeah, for dictionaries. Yeah, mm-hmm. And that is also bad because, there's a vestige of colonialism, because we were ruled by the Spaniards for 350 years, and then and we were colonized by the Americans, and we were the only formal colony of America. Yeah, and that's how we learn how to speak English, because when they set up the public school system, they taught the medium of instruction started in English. Yeah, that was also bad because that relegated the languages. So in the 60s, there was a lot of Philippinization movement, and I benefited from that because then they started saying we have to develop films in our language, in our languages, or plays or theater in our languages, and I became a part of that.
Are you currently working on anything? Are you writing anything?
Yeah,
now?
we had my paternal we had a paternal family reunion in San Diego 3 years ago, and my cousins encouraged all of us. I mean, the organizers encouraged all of us to write or to pay tribute to our ancestors. Mm-hmm. And I decided to write about my paternal grandmother.
Tell us a little bit about her.
Oh, my grandmother was, her name was grandmother Polda, or Leopolda. And she was widowed early. But she was a businesswoman, and she provided her children by selling liquor, liquor, and what else? Anchovies, yeah. And she smoked raw tobacco, and she lived till the age of 94. Yeah, she lived.
How many children did she have?
She had, I think, 5 of them, and my father was the youngest.
Your father.
Yeah.
Oh, your father.
My father was, yeah, that's
okay.
my paternal grandmother, yeah. But I did pay a tribute to her because, she lived from, it all started because there was always an incident. There was always something that showed me like a good hustler, I must say. But, she had to travel to go to to take a horse-drawn carriage to go to the marketplace, and I always observed the times that she would go to the marketplace, and I made sure that when she got off the horse-drawn carriage that I would be there waiting, and that's the time that I would ask her for money. And she always complied.
Grandparents are always supplying money to their grandchildren.
Okay.
Yes.
I think she made a good investment because I'm writing about her. But anyway, based on that incident, I ended up writing. It got just that what I call this an anecdote, because they had a book, a family book published for that reunion. So that was just a short article that I wrote. Then I expanded it into an article that got published in Filipinas magazine. It was a Filipino-American magazine based in San Francisco. And then the name of the article was Ballesteros on My Mind. Ballesteros is the name of my hometown, where I grew up in the 60s, yeah. It's a coastal town in the Philippines. So I talk about the customs and traditions. And then we also have a seashell that is endemic only to that region. Certain towns only have that. A certain seashell called gaka. You cannot find it anywhere else. It's just a few towns in Cagayan, and the name of the province is Cagayan. And I only learned from my cousin that there's a scientific basis why we only have that seashell in that area, in those areas. The beach, the sand on the beach is very, very hot, and it's grayish, and apparently there's a magnesium there, and that's conditions in which the gaka, or the seashell.
It's the ideal environment for that particular shell.
So I talk about that, and then I gave it to one of my colleagues, the article, and she just got curious about it, asking me about the seashell. How does it look like, And then I showed it to another colleague who used to be a library science teacher. And she said, I'm seeing a good picture book here. So I am writing a children's book based on that article. It's called Ballesteros on My Mind. It will be based, it will have 2 editions, one in Tagalog and one in Ilocano. Those are Philippine languages. And there will be an English translation that will be attached.
Have you lined up a publisher for this?
I were in the works, but I have an illustrator, and her name is Tani Macase. She's a New Jersey-based artist.
What is the main focus of this children's book about your grandmother? Are there,
Not
a lot
really
of...
about the town now.
Well, it's about the town.
It's about the town. Of course, my grandmother will be part of the book, but it's really about the town. Yeah, and then about the delicacy. We had the delicacy too, and then also every November 1st, 12 a.m. November 1st. That's All Saints' Day. It's a Catholic calendar.
Of course.
Yeah, but we started honoring the dead All Saints' Day.
Yes.
Instead of All Souls' Day. We started it on November 1st.
Correct.
So that is really a very interesting custom that we have there, because when the midnight strikes, people in the town watch their properties, because things could be stolen, apparently by spirits or ghosts. Yeah.
So it's pranks that are played there.
Yeah, everybody people it, and in the morning, all of those stolen goods would be in a corner of a street. Yeah, and people will just go there without getting mad. I mean, that was part of the custom.
They go and reclaim their property?
Properties. Well, sometimes, like my late aunt, so they take crosses from the cemetery, or ladders, or urns, or pots, or something. But that was a ritual, and I recounted that in
so
my
that's
book.
one of the stories.
One of the stories, and then also to. When I was in 3rd grade, it was the last year that I was studying at the elementary school, the public elementary school. Yeah, the main building was burned to the ground. Okay, right before my eyes. Yeah, it was January 1964. So that's something that I'm recounting.
That would be an intense memory.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but it's really, because I really enjoyed my childhood. I think those were the best years of my life, yeah. Mm-hmm. I really became very, very sensitive to what's happening around me, and very, very observant. I learned to not only be imaginative, but being observant, yeah.
Well, that's a very interesting story. You've given us your life history and your current interests, and the fact that you have a children's book in progress. Would you like to show us the illustration that is?
Oh yeah, it's Tani Macase. This is just a primary sketch, and she based this on a family picture that I provided her, and where am I? This one. When I was about 3 years old. Yeah, my father was an army officer, and when my sister Vilma, who lives here in Glenview, her name is Vilma Castro, was born, they decided that we stayed put in Ballesteros. Mm-hmm. Okay, so because my father was always moving around, so we stayed in one place. So as you can see, he was not here in this picture. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I see.
Yeah, and it's interesting because then the hardest part, well, the book is really intended, I originally wrote it in English. Yeah. But then I have to have it translated in Tagalog. Tagalog is the basis of the national language, which is, it is being taught in the classroom. So Tagalog is more or less standardized. Yeah. Now I'm having difficulty with the Ilocano translation because Ilocano is one of the, that's my primary language, Ilocano. The language is spoken in the northern part of the Philippines. And the bad part of that is it's not taught in the classroom. So it's not standardized. So far I've had maybe 5 translators.
So it's really a second language then.
Yeah, 5 translators helping me with that.
Okay.
And I need to collate all of them. Yeah, so that is
Well,
a task, yeah.
I wish you the best of good fortune in going forward with this project, and we'll look forward to seeing it when it's published.
Oh, sure. I will definitely give a copy to the Glenview Public Library.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
very
Dela
much.
Cruz. Thank you.
It was an honor. Yeah.
And thank you for watching Off the Shelf Conversations with Authors. I'm Martha Kofood.